You're listening to Radio Cayman, your official radio station. At this time, Radio Cayman goes live now to Cayman Brac for the Plan Cayman meeting, the public consultation meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Plan Cayman public consultation meeting for the District of Cayman Brac. I'm Donna Bush, and I'll be your moderator here this evening. This session is also being broadcast live on Radio Cayman, and I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I'd just like to make sure that everyone has signed in or plans to sign in at some point for registration, and that you have a copy of the program. If not, they're available at the back. So what is Plan Cayman, you might be asking? It's the name for Cayman's long-range comprehensive development plan that's given the physical development and overall land use. The National Development Plan process consists of three key elements. If you're not aware of what they are, the first one is the planning statement, which is what we're here to discuss tonight, and that defines the land use zones and priorities. Key number two is the area plans and zoning map, and now that's a detailed policies for different locations and zoning assignments. And then key number three is the development and planning regulations, which is the legislation to support the planning statement, the area plans, and the zoning map. So we're here tonight to hear your input, of course, on the draft planning statement document. This is the very first phase of the process of creating a new updated development plan. The last one was done, as you'll hear throughout this meeting, if you don't know already, in 1997. That's quite a long time ago. This document includes guidelines from the National Planning Framework, or the NPF, and your input, of course, is essential in refining these plans here in Cayman Brac. This town hall public consultation, as mentioned earlier, is only the first step in three in the process of creating a new national development plan. So there are going to be a series of meetings for each stage that we go through. The next two phases, as just mentioned, are the area plans and the zoning maps and the department and planning regulations. Each will have, again, their own specific consultation period and schedule. So we're here to discuss the planning statement. If you have not had an opportunity to review the document that you have, you can find it online at plancayman.ky. We also have a limited number of copies that you may have in your possession this evening. Again, we ask that everyone please put your phone on silent as we're live on Radio Cayman. And again, we welcome every one of you that's here with us tonight to this meeting. So I'd like to introduce our key speakers and our panelists that are here with us this evening. The first person I'd like to introduce is Mr. Haroon Pandowi. He's the Director of the Planning Department and the Executive Secretary of the CPA, or the Central Planning Authority. He has served as Director of Planning for the Cayman Islands since October 2010, overseeing long-range and current planning, building control, and professional registration. He aims to enhance the quality of life for residents and visitors by ensuring orderly and dynamic development that protects public health, safety, and supports our economic growth. Mr. Pandowi holds a Master's in City and Regional Planning from Rutgers University and an MBA with merit from the University of Liverpool. He's a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners. So Mr. Haroon Pandowi. Up next, we have Mr. Richard Millam. He's a planning officer in the policy of development and development section of the planning department. He's a qualified town planner and member of the Royal Town Planner and member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, rather. Richard has experience in both the private sector and local authority planning, policy roles in London, UK. Now, he moved to the Cayman Islands back in 2015. At that time, he joined the Department of Planning in 2018 before after serving on the National Trust for the Cayman Islands as their Historics Program Manager. So we have Richard Millam. We have the Chairman of the CPA, Mr. Ian Parado. He's the Managing Director of IP Consulting Limited, which is his own company. He did work for 30 years with McAlpine Limited, which is one of the largest and most successful general and civil aviation engineering contractors in the Cayman Islands. IP Consulting Limited, his company, offers project management, construction cost management, contract administration, client representative, and advisory services to local private developers, government entities, as well as contractors and other contract construction professionals. He has over 25 years' experience as a commercial construction engineer and quantity surveyor, and was the company's principal estimator up to his departure at McAlpine in 2019. His vast experience gained with McAlpine construction estimating, design management, and construction administration allows him to offer a unique service to his clients. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree in quantity surveying with honors that he gained in 1992 from Thames Polytechnic, which is now Greenwich University. Some of the major projects that he's worked on here in the Cayman Islands, just to name a few, includes the Lacovia condominiums, the Bank of Butterfield building, the Government Administration building, the South Terminal, Cruise Terminal, and the Owen Roberts Airport, as well as the Kimpton Hotel. But there's a long list of achievements that he has here locally. So the Chairman of CPA, Mr. Ian Parado. Up next, we have Mr. Handel Whitaker. He's the Deputy Chairman of the CPA. Mr. Handel Whitaker is he brings an extensive experience in urban planning and development to our panel here tonight. His insights have been instrumental in shaping the planning policies as well as strategies for the Cayman Islands. Mr. Whitaker has a background in economics and has served in various capacities within the planning authority, contributing significantly to the sustainable development of our communities. There's also a gentleman here in the middle. I'm sure you all are familiar with him. He's in the blue. That's Captain Ashton Barton, and he's the chair of the Development Control Board, or the DCB. Okay, welcome to everyone. We're going to begin this evening with a presentation by Mr. Richard Millam. He is going to walk us through and give us an overview of the development plan. So please give him a round of applause.
Okay, thanks very much, Donna. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate your time this evening. So, yes, I'm going to give a short presentation that just sets the context. obviously quite tall, so I'm going to adjust this microphone here. There we go, that's better. I'll give a short presentation that just sets the context for the planning statement document. I'll explain the development plan review process that we call Plan Cayman, and where the planning statement fits within that, and then outline the next steps moving forward. So here's a diagram that shows the various parts of the development plan, and really the main thing to take from this diagram is that the development plan is not a single document. It's made up of a number of elements, from high-level national goals and objectives down to local area-based policies and detailed guidelines. And this really is the key point to make, that the document that we presented for consultation at this stage, the planning statement document, is just one part of this. It's not the whole development plan, it's just a piece of the overall puzzle. And I'll explain how those different pieces fit together. The Plan Cayman process began with the National Planning Framework document in late 2018. You may recall the consultation exercises that took place in late 2018 and into early 2019. And that document represents a broad policy document for the other stages of the development plan review. And since that time, the project team has been formed to assist the Central Planning Authority on the Development Control Board, and last year we began drafting the document that forms the next stage of the plan review. So that then brings us to the planning statement document itself, and this is the document that is out for consultation and that we're inviting your feedback on at this stage. The purpose of the planning statement is to define the zones, the overlays, and the broad policies that will then apply in later stages of the development plan review. So you might think of the planning statement as a mission statement, as it seeks to define and set out top priorities. And there's really two kind of key messages or aspects of the planning statement that I really want to highlight. The first is that it now incorporates the sister islands, both Little Cayman and Cayman Brac. And the second is that it establishes the concept of area plans. And these plans, which will be the next stage, will be prepared over the coming years. And the idea of area plans is they'll follow broad national policies, but in a way that is specific, that's appropriate, and that's relative to these different places. So when we prepare area plans, that's when we actually start to apply zoning to the map. That's where, with your help, with the help of stakeholders, members of the public, we'll determine the most appropriate zoning requirements to meet the needs of different places. Each area plan will therefore involve full public consultation, and we very much want you to include it continuously in the process. Now, the boundaries that are shown on this diagram here, and if it's not too clear, this is a pretty big screen. This is on page 5 of the planning statement. And these boundaries are indicative, but they represent character. So it's a recognition that the character of these places varies significantly throughout the Cayman Islands. So from Georgetown to Sutton Beach, to East End, to Little, to Brac, there's such varied character of these places. And so because of that, applying land use zones across the islands at one time possibly doesn't serve those places adequately. For appropriate heights, density, setbacks, etc., for say a commercial zone in one area might not be appropriate in another. So as each area plan is prepared, with your input and with your feedback, and the zones are applied to the map, different requirements, restrictions, and regulations can be introduced to help achieve the vision that you help us create, to help achieve that vision for each of these places. So coming back to the planning statement, this relatively short document has been prepared based on the policies of the National Planning Framework and the structure of the existing 1997 planning statement, so hopefully it has some familiarity. Section 1 of the planning statement provides some background information and sets out the development plan structure, how the different documents fit together, and then it sets out a vision and a set of objectives which all seek to balance social, environmental, and economic considerations to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this sustainable development objective runs throughout the planning statement. Section 2, meanwhile, is titled The Challenges and Opportunities We Face, and this helps to explain why this document and why the whole development plan process is so important. The development plan relates to such a range of issues, from the quality of the natural environment to the availability of housing at all income levels, from supporting a successful economy to responding to climate change, improving transportation, meeting demands for infrastructure and public spaces for recreation. All of these things have to be considered, they have to be balanced to ensure that we maintain high quality of life standards. Section 3, which is from page 11 onwards, defines the various planning zones and explains why we have them and what their main purpose is. And the full list of planning zones is listed there to the right-hand side of that screen. But these zones follow a somewhat familiar format in Grand Cayman that we're currently working with, and there are some additions and changes to those, and those are going to set out in the bullet points on the left there. And just to summarise, we've added an agricultural zone, which would replace the existing agricultural residential zone. There's a new estate residential and a new single-family residential zone. A new transit industrial zone, which allows for transit operations such as ports and airports and associated facilities. We've separated education and civic zones, better define the location of those particular uses. In terms of tourism, there's a resort residential zone, which provides a transition between tourism and residential areas. And lastly, a new community open space zone, which would allow for privately owned spaces that may provide active or passive recreation. Clearly, that's a very quick overview, and there's more detail in the document, but really to summarise, all of these zones serve to provide clear rules on what may or may not be permitted in different areas. And that provides certainty for landowners, for neighbouring residents, to have a better understanding and appreciation of what may come forward in your community. Section 4 is titled Overlay Zones, and this is for situations where there are special circumstances that require additional considerations beyond that of the underlying zoning. This includes 5 overlays, the first of which is a natural resource preservation overlay. This provides a way of ensuring that development is sensitive to natural resources by applying additional development standards or mitigation measures as necessary. There's a new airport approach overlay, which will ensure safe and appropriate land uses within the approaches at airports. A heritage preservation overlay, which is an update of an existing historic overlay. Fourthly, a land subject acquisition overlay, which would establish a method to designate property that government intends to acquire, be it for roads, public parks, government buildings, facilities. And then lastly, a sensitive coastline overlay, which seeks to ensure that growth in vulnerable coastal areas, which are defined by risk analysis models, incorporates appropriate hazard risk reduction considerations. And this is about minimising threats not only to human safety, to people's properties, but also to the natural environment. And then the last section in the document, section 5, sets out other policy considerations. So these are additional policies that we applied regardless of the underlying zoning, the underlying overlay for a particular project. And these considerations, which you can see cover kind of a broad range of topics, all serve to meet the main objectives of the plan as set out in the earlier sections. So that's a quick overview of the planning statement document. And again, we encourage everyone to go away to read it, to visit the website. On the website, you'll find not only the document itself, but the supporting materials, the feedback form, and that's the main way that we're seeking to collect your input and your responses. And just to confirm, the consultation period is open until the 6th of August, so still a couple of weeks. In terms of next steps and how we would take the document forward post-consultation, once all of the responses have been received, we would assist the Central Planning Authority in seeking approval to convene a development plan tribunal, and this is where conflicting responses are considered, leading towards a final document. Follow the tribunal hearings, a report of amendments will be prepared for consideration prior to the planning statement being forwarded to Ministry, then on to Cabinet, and then on to Parliament. And ultimately, the planning statement would need to be approved by Parliament, and once that happens, we're in a position to move forward with the first of the area plans. And in terms of area plan preparation, the intention is that they'll be prepared based on existing resources, 2 per year, so it would take us somewhere between 5 and 5.5 years to complete all 11 of the area plans. So to conclude, I just want to come back to this diagram and again just highlight that the planning statement document is just a step along the way. It's part of the overall process. Again, it defines the zones and the overlays and the other more general considerations that we applied on an area-by-area basis in later stages. And to create these, we need your input, we need your knowledge, we need your views, your residents, your stakeholders, you work and live in these places. And once we have area plans in place, we have a better set of tools for decision makers to make decisions with teeth on a range of projects. So thank you very much. Thank you again for your time. And I'll hand it back to Donna now for comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you very much, Richard. Before we begin with questions this evening, I'd like to just reintroduce quickly our panelists for this evening who will be responding tonight. Mr. Haroon Pandowi, the Director of Planning, as well as the Executive Secretary of the CPA. We have Mr. Richard Milam, he's the Planning Officer from the Department of Planning. We have Captain Ashton Bodden, Chairman of the Development Control Board, the Chairman of the CPA, Mr. Ian Parado, and the Deputy Chairman of the CPA, Mr. Handel Whitaker. So we have a few warm-up questions that we'll be asking some of our panelists this evening, just to get the ball rolling. In the meantime, we're going to encourage each of you to think of the questions as well as concerns that you may have that you want to talk about. And then I'm going to invite you to the mic, ask you to speak into the mic because we are live on Radio Cayman, so we want everyone in Radio Land to be able to hear you. So the first question this evening is, why is Plan Cayman important? That question is for Mr. Haroon. Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to see you all out here this evening for this meeting. To your question, Donna, why is Plan Cayman important? Plan Cayman represents an opportunity for members of the community to craft and articulate a vision for how you wish for your community to be developed over a number of years. It's that critical juncture whereby you get to set the parameters as to how you wish for the character of your neighborhood to be developed. Once you set those parameters, those will influence decision makers. Members such here in Cayman Brac would be the Development Control Board. They would understand that vision and they're able to then apply that vision when persons apply for planning permission. So again, it's a critical stage and it allows you to have a community that represents how you wish to live.
Thank you, Mr. Pandowi. The next question is for Mr. Milam. The question is, how will Plan Cayman be put in place?
I think I touched on it in the presentation, but Plan Cayman will be implemented through the creation of area plans. So as I said, that's that kind of cascading process of taking national objectives but applying them in a way that is appropriate to where you live. Once that's in place, they'll be implemented through decision making, through the decisions that in Cayman Brac situation, the Development Control will take. They will at least have a set of guidelines and rules that come from a place of data and from it's just updated. It's something that is reflective of where you live. So yeah, we just need in place an updated set of rules, I think, for not only for Cayman Brac but for each of the areas.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a third question. We'd like to ask Captain Bodden this question, actually. The question is, Captain Bodden, how can the community get involved in the Plan Cayman process?
I think I'll pass that over to Haroon.
Okay, Mr. Whitaker.
Good evening, everyone. In order for this plan to work, all of us need to get involved. As some of you may or may not be aware, we've had a development plan in 1977, and that took us to 1997. Now, needless to say, that plan is 26 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So it's literally impossible for us to drive down that road anymore. We need to get your input. Everybody needs to get involved for this to work. And in today's world, every one of us has a computer, so we need you to go online, review it, talk to your children about it, and get involved. This whole process involves involvement with all the residents of Cayman Brac.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitaker. Of course, the reason that all of you are here tonight is to get the answers to your questions and concerns that you may have. So we're now opening the floor for questions at the mic in the middle of the room. If you prefer to send in your questions, you can do so through by scanning the QR code with your phone here on screen. For those who are listening at home, this is called slido.com, and the code for those who are at home and want to send their questions anonymously, this is an anonymous app. The code is 120, that's 120-4780. Again, you're welcome if you're in the audience to also just take a scan of the QR code on your phone. Otherwise, the floor is open for your questions. Again, we're here to discuss the planning statement, which is the first phase of this process only. There'll be a round of consultations, as I mentioned earlier, for each of the next steps, which are the area zones and department planning regulations. Of course, our panelists are here tonight representing both the Department of Planning and the Central Planning Authority, as well as Captain Bodden is here representing the Development Control Board. Again, please note that tonight's public consultation is live on Radio Cayman. So again, anybody for the mic? No? Okay. You may want to take the mic and just hold it.
Good evening. Actually, I have two questions.
Sure.
In your mission statement, it discussed safeguarding culture. I am a part of the family and multi-generational. Been here a long time. My kids are Caymanian, and so culture is a big part of how we operate as a family and operate as a business. And I just wanted a little bit of clarity on that mission statement where it said safeguard culture. Every island is a little bit different in terms of culture. And so how does the board, how does the government define or identify the specific culture for each of the island, and how does that integrate into the overall plan?
Chair will take a question.
Yeah, I'll make a start. I think a starting point for us is, there's a few different ways we could go with it, but so the National Planning Framework document that we prepared in 2018, a key part of that was putting together a lot of different government policies, plans, and one of those was a national cultural policy. And so the key elements of that fed into the document. But it's a good question because, yeah, culture means different things to different people. And I think for me personally, don't want to touch on my background of national trust, then for me, culture often gets to the physical and it's the historic buildings. And so we have the new heritage preservation overlay, which will be about identifying the unique aspects of not only historic properties, but sort of conservation areas that they just have a good feel because of the heritage value. And so it's defining what that is would give better rules for the Development Control Board in terms of, is this a building that just needs to be outright preserved, or is this a building that just has unique features that perhaps could be reflected in new developments in the location? So that's one thing, definitely historic buildings. I think you're right, though, that culture does mean different things to different people, and so that's where the input of yourselves to tell us what that is. Is it cultural about lifestyle? Is it about recreation? Is it about even something like cooking? Is there anything in the physical development that can better reflect these things? I don't know if, obviously, the non-Caymanian on the board, so there's others that can chime in, but...
Yep, fully support and endorse what Richard has said, but I think you made it an extremely important point when you said that culture is very unique and people see the cultural significance of things differently. And I think that's why for us it was key to introduce the area plans. So rather than taking sort of a very broad brush approach to say, okay, on a sort of 60,000 level view, this is what culture is, and we're going to translate that into every single community. Through the area plans, we allow each community to define for itself, okay, this is what culture means to us. It could be, as Richard says, the built form in terms of safeguarding historical buildings. It could be safeguarding natural vistas, access to the sea, for instance, the ability to preserve scenic coastline. And through the area plans, it gives that critical opportunity for every single member of a community to ask themselves that question. So the planning statement sets out, as you said, sort of these broad goals, and it then allows the community to answer those questions for themselves, whether that's the preservation of culture, answering the question of how to ensure affordable housing is available for people in our community, how are the housing types that we want to see in our community that enable people to multi-generationally live in a community, and they don't have to leave a community in order to find a housing type that meets their social and economic needs. So again, the statement just sort of sets out those things that as a community that we want every single community to put its mind to, but then craft a unique implementation mechanism that represents the community and what the community feels about those particular topics.
You had a second question, sir, or was that?
Yeah, no, thank you. The second question is similar in nature. Obviously, there's been a lot of development in the United States and in the Caribbean and the Cayman Islands. Is a large part of this plan in response to just a massive growth in development from around the world, kind of focusing here in the Cayman Islands? And is there any data that comes with that, just in terms of thinking about how the area map gets overlaid onto the geography?
Thank you.
Evening. I guess it's twofold, right? In Cayman Brac right now, you don't have a development plan. So if you're going to craft this for the future, there's been very little development here so far, but the world's changing. You can see that things are going to happen here eventually. You want to have some guide in there that guides the development board as to what you want in those areas. What we find in Cayman now, our development plan is 1997, right? It's 20-something years old. That development plan doesn't cater for where highways are now. It doesn't cater for how communities have developed. I mean, some areas in Cayman are zoned low-density residential, and you look at it, it's all high-density residential, right? So we have to sort of adjust that to what's actually being built, and gives the future. This area is going to be low-density residential, it's going to be high-density residential, and then it allows us also to preserve the environmental zones that people want. You got historic overlay. I mean, we have a big challenge right now in certain areas where historic houses are just being, removed, and condos or commercial buildings put in, and really a lot of it is done without even the consent of the board sometimes, right? When we have a chance, we try and do our best to get the National Trust involved. It's not always easy. We had a application that came before us last year for Foster's in West Bay, and we worked with the National Trust, we worked with the developer, and that house got moved to a location in Frankstown, right? But these things shouldn't have to be the CPA going out and do this. Should be an automatic thing. You're a developer, you know there's a listed house on your property, there's a certain way you do it. The plan doesn't allow for any of that right now, or it does, but not to the extent it needs to, that the CPA or development board can make those decisions and knows what the rules are. Right now it's kind of like, develop and push the limit and try and fit as much as you can on the site, ask for variances, and the CPA, we get a lot of criticism for that, but in some instances, because the plan is so old, you really have to look at it slightly different and make a discretional decision. I don't know how Cap National does it here in Cayman Brac when you've got nothing, right? I mean, he just said he hasn't been shot yet, so he can't be doing that bad a job, right? But, it must be very difficult for them. But at least we have something, they have nothing, right? So I would think that if the community can come together and decide, this is what we want, this is what it should be, everyone can agree, then that gives everyone an idea of what the future is going to look like. And if every 5 years this thing is updated, we don't have this 20-something year gap where, roads are in West Bay Road, the highway there, 10, 15 years, still road zone, a lot of it residential, right? There's things that need to change, and you'll find out here as things develop here, you'll have that need for a plan, and if you don't have it, then you'll be kind of just guessing and making a lot of discretionary decisions, which some people like, some people won't. If you have a plan you start with, you got a better chance of making at least 90% of people happy. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah. If I may,
Captain Ashton, will you need a mic, please?
all of this that we have heard, it points to one thing in particular to me. That means we need a zoning. We need it done properly, we need it done right. But these things can't happen until we get some kind of zoning in Cayman Brac. I know some people is not fond of it, but I think that one thing needs to happen here in order for other things to happen.
Mr. Whitaker?
Just adding to what our chairman just indicated, on the zoning, you all would have to decide like what area you would want hotels, what area you would want industrial, what area you would want light industrial. These are important things that you all have to think about going down the future. Because let's be realistic, you wouldn't want to buy a piece of property and someone's going to come and say, hey, I'm going to put a garage right next to your house, or I'm going to use the piece of property next to you for agriculture. The two don't work. So this is where we need everybody's input for this to work.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your questions to the panel. I'd like to welcome the District Commissioner, Mr. Mark Tibbetts, to the meeting tonight. Just a reminder that you can send your questions in anonymously on your phone. You don't even have to do the QR code if you don't want to. You can just go to slido.com and put in that code and ask your questions anonymously, and we'll ask the questions for you up here. Yeah? Anybody else want to go to the mic to ask a question?
My question goes more to enforcement of the rules and regulations.
I'm going to ask you to speak into the microphone.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I thought I was loud enough. My question goes more to the enforcement of the rules and regulations that are already in place, because it seems like an enforcement here is a problem. And I'll sit down and listen to you guys talk about that.
Thank you.
Jump on that one. I guess I may need you to expand a little bit on that.
Well, things go on over here. Land gets cleared. Things get done on the bluff edge, which are supposed to be against rules and regulations, but it happens anyway without permitting. So I'm wondering about enforcement and how you plan to address that going forward.
Okay, and thank you for expanding on the question. I guess one of the big challenges that we have in the Sister Islands is because of the lack of clarity and definition of the rules. There are a number of and I guess Cap National will call them sort of long-standing policies or views, but they're not actually articulated in regulation. So, such as the distance from the edge of the bluff that you can build on. There's certain sort of statements in the development plan, but there isn't an actual number that one can point to. So in Grand Cayman with zoning, okay, if I'm building in a low-density residential neighborhood, my front setback is 20 feet, my rear is 20. If it's a single-story house, the side setbacks are 10. If it's 2 or greater, up to 3 stories, it's 15 feet. So everyone knows those rules up front. Unfortunately, when that's not articulated, it comes on a case-by-case basis as to how that's applied. And I think that's sort of where that challenge that you're speaking to comes about, because then unless you're sort of deeply involved in that, you're left asking that question, okay, well, how did they come to that determination? What was the backing for that? And unfortunately, unless you define those rules, you're sort of left dealing with things on a case-by-case basis. And unfortunately, as we see oftentimes on a case-by-case basis, it leads to inconsistency. So that's why it's so key that as a community, that you define those rules and that there is common agreement, okay, that these are the rules by which, through common assent, we're willing to live by. And this is what, so when someone applies for planning permission for a particular use, these are the rules that we expect to be applied. Yes, there will have to be a mechanism for the application of variances, because there are certain unique features. It might be just the shape of the land, for instance, that you may not be able to get a 20-foot setback in all areas because it's an odd-shaped parcel. But again, that would be the exception rather than the rule. Again, having those rules brings clarity for everyone.
Do you have a question? Please go to the mic in the middle. Thank you.
I've been the planning officer here for quite a while now, and I find that the most difficult thing about working in the planning office is the lack of regulations. The board does have a lot of discretion, but we've received a lot of very unusual applications in the last few years. So without a history of how to address a certain type of development, they're basically, sometimes they don't know how to interpret an application. So they ask the applicant to come in, they sit down with the person, they go through the application, then they make a decision. I'm wondering if you could possibly make the area plans for Cayman, Brac, and Little Cayman a priority as opposed to the other 9 area plans, because at this point we really don't have anything to go by. You at least have something in Grand Cayman. Here in the Brac, even the 97 development plan says very little about Cayman, Brac, and Little Cayman. I totally understand the lady's question about enforcement. We've had so many after-the-fact situations, especially with clearings, because people come and they want to clear a lot to see what it looks like. They want to know whether they want to buy it or not, because on the bluff, some of it's beautiful farmland, some of it is so rocky, you don't know what you're buying, so they want to clear it first. And the way the board has dealt with that for an after-the-fact situation, when they do get the house application, they adjourn it until that after-the-fact fee is paid and the clearing is, an application is in for the clearing. But again, if we could prioritize Cayman, Brac, and Little Cayman, that would help tremendously. So when you do the 11 area plans, do you have a schedule sort of for who's first and who's last, or you do them all at one time, and how do you plan to do that?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I can speak to scheduling. The intention is that it would be 2 per year. That's based on, and primarily based on resources, but also the fact that I think if we came forward with 11 area plans at the same time, it'd be overwhelming not just for us, but for the public. So the intention is 2 per year, and each is a development plan, so each would have a stage of the folks in my team and within the department gathering data. We would then have a consultation period where we present that information to you and obviously gain your input into what you see, not only as a vision for your area, but very specific zoning. Like Mr. Handel said, where do you see the different uses in broad terms and very specifically, parcel by parcel. And then area plans would have to ultimately be approved in Parliament. So they have a lengthy process, and the intention is that as we're working our way through one, we can start another one. It'd be a kind of cascading process. And as I said, over the 5-year plan period, we would hope to have all 11 completed. And that then puts us in a situation where we can revisit them. So we really genuinely do not want to be in a situation where we're back here in 27 years saying we haven't touched this. It's that we prepare an area plan, we finish all of them, and then we would define a set of performance indicators to tell us, is the area plan actually achieving what it's set out to? And if not, we can revisit it. In terms of scheduling which one comes first, that would probably be a political decision. We're the civil servants, we're obviously are subject to the politics. I think all we could do is suggest that you reach out to your MP and kind of make the case for why you feel Brac should be first. I think it's a very good point that you don't have a plan at the moment, so that gives you some kind of more pressing requirement.
Mr. Whitaker?
In regards to the area plan, we did a similar presentation in Little Cayman last Monday night, and it was very well received. They have already started to put a group of individuals together to study exactly how they want Little Cayman to grow. And if I'm not mistaken, they're scheduling a meeting on the 27th to get feedback from everyone. They don't want the airport to move. They want certain height on buildings. They don't want any buildings higher than 3 stories. They want a limited amount of construction. But in all of that to take place, it comes right back to involvement. We can present the plan, but you have to get involved and say, this is how I want Cayman, Brac, and Little Cayman to look like 15, 20 years down the line. And I must say, the residents in Little Cayman are very proactive, and they're on the ball. And we're hoping that you all would do the same.
Thank you very much for the question, as well as the responses from various members on the panel. There are a few Slido questions that I'm going to now ask, as well as one from a couple who are from the Brac, but they're currently off island. And I'm going to go with their question first. The question addresses access roads to landlocked properties. Has been an issue for many years here on Cayman Brac. They want me to ask if access roads to landlocked properties on the bluff, will this be addressed in the new plans? I think a better explanation of it is there are persons on island, obviously, that own property, but they can't access their property because of how things are currently.
Okay. So that would be addressed through the infrastructure component of the plan, which would then be articulated in that area plan. So one of the challenges right now, because there is sort of no guide to where development can be placed, densities, et cetera, you're sort of left for a project to force the provision of infrastructure as opposed to the proactive provision of infrastructure. So you're sort of left, and that's where, an entity such as the Development Control Board is placed at a disadvantage, where a project will come forward and say, well, we want to be cited X, and in response, then the decision has to be made, will infrastructure be provided to support that, versus being able to do it in an orderly fashion that ensures that, say, the provision of infrastructure results in access for the greater good, as it were. So, short answer, yes, that is an important component of the plan, and how do we allocate infrastructure and access to various areas of the land.
Okay, thank you very much. This question is from Slido. It asks, please explain who decides on zoning.
Simply put, the community. So I think, as I said, we can present both data and as qualified planners, our input, our expertise, and our suggestions. But ultimately, it's your plan, it's your futures. In many cases, it's your land as well. So we would take the input from yourselves on what actual zoning is and how that's distributed across Cayman Brac.
Okay, and another way that you're going to be able to give your input, not just here tonight, but if you go to plancayman.ky, there's a survey feedback that's on there. So if there's anything that you hear here tonight, any questions that you may ask tonight, it's important that you take that next step and actually put it in writing on the plancayman.ky feedback form so that your feedback can be heard in written form for the persons who will be leading the plan. Mr. Whitaker? No? Okay. The other question from Slido is asking, will zoning in Little Cayman and Cayman Brac cover both islands, or will they be addressed separately? Mr. Whitaker?
They will be separately. What we have to understand is what is good for Cayman Brac is not good for Little Cayman, and what is good for Little Cayman is not good for Cayman Brac. So they will be separated. And having owned property in Little Cayman, we want to protect Little Cayman to make sure that everything is done right, that 15, 20 years down the line, that Little Cayman remains as much as it is at this particular point in time.
Okay. Mr. Mellon, you have anything to say? To add? No?
Well, just to quickly tag on to that, and just as why it has, in our view, it has to be two separate processes, because as Mr. Whitaker says, the inputs of the community are different. And the key to an area plan, a key to a development plan, is a balancing exercise of taking what could be seen as competing interests within a community and balancing that and crafting a plan that allows each aspect of a community to have a say in their community and how the character of that community comes forth.
Okay. I'd like to encourage all of you that are here tonight to please, your friends and family, colleagues who may not be here tonight, please encourage them to go on the plancayman.ky website and provide their feedback. They can also email questions and any concerns that they may have directly to plancayman@gov.ky. That's the email address. If you have any questions that may, that you may not have asked tonight or that wasn't addressed, please email them. Ma'am, you have a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, on your map that you had displayed earlier, it had pads for Hell City and pads for Cayman Bay. Are there any pads planned for Cayman Brac, or is that something the community has to decide on, or is that something that is already in the works?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you. No, pads come about from basically as development applications. So they're for properties that are 40 acres and larger, where they have at least three different uses. Then they are kind of their own zoning set up, and they're very comprehensive master planned project. And the reason that they're on this diagram is partly for context, just to show where they are and which ones actually exist and have been approved, but also to demonstrate that they effectively have determined their zoning criteria already through that PAD process.
And I guess just following on, again, just highlighting the importance of this exercise is that this exercise allows you as a community to proactively make that determination to say, do you wish to have a PAD in Cayman Brac? So you, as a community, you get to decide that up front. You get to set the rules for that, as opposed to having that being thrust upon you, and then you're unfortunately in a position of having to respond to that.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, ma'am. Yeah? Okay, we have another question from Slido. It says, the planning statement is the first step. What is the timeline for completion and implementation of the National Development Plan?
I think I did sort of touch on it a little bit, but just to kind of recap, the process for the planning statement itself, the intention is that we would have this approved within this calendar year, and then that puts us in a situation where we can commence work on the area plans. And as I said earlier, our hope and our intention is that we can prepare all of the area plans over the 5-year development plan review cycle. So that would be, give or take, 2 plans per year.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Mr. Whitaker. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that we have to take into consideration as well is climate change. We know that Beryl just went by us, and in Cayman, if you're on the beach, there's certain setbacks that we have to maintain. If you're in a hotel tourism zone, you have to have a setback of 130 feet. If you're just a private house, you have to be 75 feet. I think one of the things that we have been experiencing in Cayman is people want to get closer to the ocean, but that also comes with a risk. Hurricane comes and you're damaged. The insurance rate doesn't only go up for that individual house, it goes for everybody. So when these zones and stuff are implemented, it sets rules and regulations that you have to abide by those rules and regulations.
Mr. Curran?
Sorry, I don't know if I could just tag on to what Mr. Handel was saying. The current plan sets those setbacks based on zones. But as we can all appreciate, I think, just driving around Cayman Brac, the different coastal properties, depending on the orientation, depending on whether there's a reef offshore, how shallow the water is, you get differing conditions. So one of the things that through the area plans are aimed to address is to respond to those unique characteristics of an area. So you're not blindly following, okay, we're going to have a 130-foot setback. When the reality is that particular area, in order to Mr. Handel's point, to be safely occupied, may need an increased setback, or because of certain natural features, you can actually reduce that setback. So again, one of the key aspects of the area plan is to be able to craft a plan that responds to the uniqueness of an area and not just sort of a blanket approach in the hopes that everything sort of fits ultimately, and then you're then left with a situation where the boards have to be empowered with this tremendous amount of discretion to try to respond to those case-by-case basis. We'd rather have a community in a position where they can set those rules up front and that everyone can then operate within that context.
Exactly.
I have some more questions from Slido, but anyone from the audience have any questions at this time? Okay, we'll move on to the Slido questions. This one asks a question followed by a statement. Will this plan include specific protections against development? Laws against development can help guide the island away from what has happened in Grand Cayman. So the question again, will this plan include specific protections against development?
I guess, don't know what I would say is not so much against development. What this plan will do is, again, allow a community to guide development. So I think right now, and just by how the question is formed, I would take away that people are feeling that they're having development thrust upon them, and they don't have a voice and ability to proactively they're almost left to just simply respond to something that's coming at them, versus through an area plan where they can set the rules and they can give themselves that level of assurance. Back to what the gentleman said earlier, in terms of this plan being a mission statement. You know, like any business, the mission statement tells you, it tells the world what's important for that business. It might even define, you know, and that business then takes that to say, okay, this is what's important to us. These are the customers. This is how we'll respond to the customers. And again, by setting that plan, you then guide the development that actually might show up on your doorstep. Because up front, if someone's looking to do development, they can say, okay, does my proposal fit within what the residents of an area has said they wish to see in their community? If not, maybe my proposal is just not suitable for the area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haroon. Mr. Whitaker?
Just adding to what Mr. Haroon just said, I'm sure you all are aware that since the pandemic, there's been an influx of land purchasing here in the Brac. And if I were in your position, I see the same thing over in Little Cayman. When I first went to Little Cayman 5 years ago, when you drive along the road, all you saw was for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale. If you drive today, you don't see one sign. You know, all of the property has been bought up. So my point is, you all should be really concerned about the amount of development that could possibly occur here within another 5 years. So that's why it's really important for you all to get on board and dictate how you want your community or your island to be like.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
To that point, it seems like you want we as a community to articulate what it is that we want. Why do we not have our own planning board on sister islands?
Well, I think you do.
Well, it doesn't seem to be very effective. Things are just happening willy-nilly, and there is a lot of clearing and things that are going on that don't seem to be dictated by anybody. No regulations or anything. I mean, I know there's regulations.
I know, since you have the district representative here, I would kind of lead you to speak to him on something as such. Because we, as a CPA board in Cayman, we have no authority over what happens here in the Brac or in Little Cayman. So I guess from your question, you all may want to strengthen what you have so that those problems will eventually disappear.
Mr. Pandoy? Mr. Biden, Captain Biden?
On the subject of land clearing, for example, it's hard for us to control that. In fact, we can't completely control it anyway. Someone will buy a piece of property, have plans to build on it, and while the plans are being made drawn up, next morning we go drive by, and the land is cleared. So, you know, we can't control that kind of where people act. It'll become after the fight for the land clearing, but we can't control it. It's difficult. Even in Little Cayman, it's just as bad. So, as far as controlling, even starting homes sometimes, people will start homes and we don't even know until they do it, because they're hid somewhere behind the bushes or something that we don't know, and we don't know. So things like that, it's difficult for us to control.
Thank you, Captain National. Ms. Pardo?
Can I just add to that? I don't want you all to think that we don't have the same issues in Cayman, right? We do, right? We have, if you look at our agendas, we have a lot of after facts on a lot of stuff, right? So we're not lily white there either. Now, part of the problem is, one, you know, it's human nature. People always push the limit. Just like you have people speeding on the road, drinking and driving, you can have people clearing land. It's human nature. People are going to push the rules, right? But what I think is a problem is that the fines or something like that is easier to clear and ask forgiveness than it is to get permission, right? You know? So there needs to be maybe heavier fines on enforcement. Maybe some of those things need to be left for the board to decide. I mean, we had a case we knew in Grand Cayman where someone intentionally built in a setback after the fact and basically told his architect he didn't worry, he only had to pay 10 times the fee, right? But if that was left for the board to say, well, instead of spending $750, whatever, we're going to charge you $50,000, guy might have thought twice about doing it, right? So there may be some sort of, you know, that's more into the law and so on, but there needs to be some sort of enforcement, which is at discretion of the board, where you get people that are blatantly violating it, or not just paying a pittance as a fine, right? So.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have some more questions that have been coming in on Slido. Again, remember, Slido is anonymous. Just go to slido.com and put the code that's there, 120-4780 with your questions. So the next question asks, can the panel describe how the process works for each area plan, the case of Sister Islands, Little Cayman, Cayman Brac, and then Grand Cayman, which is first, how will it be prioritized? I think this may have been partially answered already, but if we could talk about how the process will work for each area plan.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I did speak about the prioritisation and kind of appealing to yourselves to reach out to your MP on that. In terms of process, I think I did kind of cover it, but as I said, the process as I would see it is that each area plan would commence with kind of data collection. That's data from census information from the Economics and Statistics Office. That's data we have within the department on planning approvals, where they're coming forward, what kind of projects are coming forward. And we can present all of that to yourselves in a concise way that I guess just starts the process in terms of helping to understand where growth is happening, what kind of growth is happening. We'd then be appealing to yourselves to help us craft the area plans, start thinking about what zoning would be applied to different parcels. And then when we've had that input, we would put out a final zoning map for consultation. We would seek comments on that, and it would follow the same process then that the planning statement does, where inevitably you're going to get some conflicting views on certain parcels, and those would go to a tribunal for consideration. And then ultimately, the area plan, which would consist of a written statement and a zoning map, would go to Parliament for approval.
Thank you very much for that question. Mr. Whitford?
One of the things that I would like to say to you all